The Hall of Fame game is the official kickoff of NFL preseason action. The 2023 contest will be between the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. We are all very excited that football is finally back. However, the preseason is a bit of a tease, especially the Hall of Fame game, which is basically like the fruit stripe gum version of the football watching experience. But in this episode, I will preview teams involved and discuss what I will be paying special attention to stay engaged through the entire game to help prepare you for your dynasty and season long leagues. This is episode 51 of the Fantasy Ladder podcast. I'm your host, Steve at Fantasy Ladder. This podcast is brought to you by the IDP Guys YouTube channel and podcast network. We are back and we are very excited that football is back. So let's climb the ladder of fantasy football together. So the Hall of Fame game obviously happens in Canton, Ohio, where the Hall of Fame is, and because of that, let's just kick things off with previewing the Cleveland Browns. What I do every offseason is I try to write down every team and then the players that I would be interested in drafting in that season. Now, the Cleveland Browns, there's a lot of names that come up. So it's a very fantasy football friendly offense, very intrigued by a lot of the talent. Now, in this Hall of Fame game, a lot of the big time starters that we're going to be, aggressively targeting in our drafts this year are not going to be suiting up. So, no Deshaun Watson, obviously the starting quarterback, who's currently being drafted in early Fantasy Pros ADP at quarterback 9. No Nick Chubb in this contest, who's going right now as the RB6. Amari Cooper, wide receiver 17. David Njoku, tight end 10. Elijah Moore, wide receiver 47. Unfortunately, no, there will not be a revenge game narrative here for you preseason DFS nerds. And no Donovan Peoples Jones as well. Currently going at wide receiver 62. So early stage ADP, really can't complain about any of those spots where those players are going right now. So because these players are not going to be suiting up, what am I going to be paying the most attention to in this Hall of Fame game for all the remaining players on the depth chart? Biggest one for me is I'm going to have a close eye on Jerome Ford, who is the backup running back, at least the next in line behind Nick Chubb, according to the depth chart. At this point, for season long purposes, he would be a priority handcuff option, a very juicy offense. You want as many pieces of this offense as possible, especially, and God forbid something bad happens to Nick Chubb. Jerome Ford at this point would be the next man up. As a rookie last season, he really didn't do much. He may have totaled 10 total touches, like it really wasn't much. So it's kind of a little bit of an unknown. So I believe he'll be early in line to get the touches in this contest. I'm going to be hoping and wanting to see him be efficient and productive with the touches that he gets. But I did want to double check the depth chart because even though Ford didn't do much as a rookie, I just wanted to see who else was behind him. So behind him in that running game would be Demetric Felton, another running back who was a rookie last year as well. He is more of an undersized, like Swiss Army knife type of player. I'm going to be interested to see if he latches on to any kind of a pass catching role, not just in this game, but throughout the preseason. That'll be a very intriguing piece of the offense to hold on to. Just keep an eye out, just in case things go wrong with the starters. Then beyond him, I was kind of interested to see was John Kelly, who at one time was the once sought after handcuff to the elite Rams version of Todd Gurley. Somehow John Kelly has outlasted Todd Gurley in the league. Football is just weird and brutal sometimes, but it is what it is. That just really caught my eye. I thought that was kind of funny. But we'll see what he can do in this game as well. Now, aside from the already pretty stout group of pass catchers in this offense, two wide receivers I'm especially am going to be keeping my eye on in this contest. First will be the second-year wide receiver David Bell, who, as a rookie last year, played only greater than 50% of the snaps in 8 games. He only totaled 24 catches, which, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty disappointing for a player who was a seemingly safe second round rookie pick in 2022 spring rookie drafts. But of course, he now faces tough competition with the added talent to that receiving core, especially with the rookie who I'm going to mention here in a bit. And with David Bell, it's kind of personal for me. I was very, very excited and intrigued by his presence in that offense last year, where I actually did refuse to do a trade that really could have benefited me. So it just kind of makes me ask this question. Not just for fantasy football, but just for like real life purposes. Like, is the haunting nature of indecision worse than the actualized regret from a poor decision? That's a big question. I'm not remotely ready to totally dive into that. But if you are curious about what that trade was, comment in the video or tag me on Twitter or on X now, and I'll be happy to share it with you there. But it is a doozy. Either way, I'll have a close eye on David Bell. Hopefully, he can compete for the fifth receiving option, is what we're basically looking at for his prospects this year with the already good talent that's in the offense. The other wide receiver, of course, is Cedric Tillman, who was the third round selection for the Browns at 74th overall and was that secondary piece of the Elijah Moore trade. So the Browns traded away their second round pick to the Jets, brought in Elijah Moore and a third round pick. With that third round pick, they get Cedric Tillman, who actually turned out to be a very common third round rookie draft target for myself and in a lot of leagues, a lot of my dynasty leagues I was in. My question is can he make my taxi squad happy? What can he do in these preseason games to make me feel good about having him there? And again, he will be competing for that fifth receiving option along with David Bell. So definitely want to see how many routes they're running, how frequently one or the other is getting targeted, and obviously what they can do with that, especially how they're going to be targeted. If it's in the end zone, if it's a bigger body guy like Cedric Tillman, are they going to be trying to create one-on-one matchups for him? These are things that I'll be looking out for. Now, as far as the tight ends go, obviously David Njoku is the top dog there, but they do have a couple of options behind him, which are kind of intriguing for deeper, especially tight end premium leagues. They bring in Jordan Akins, who's kind of on the older side, generally speaking, touchdown dependent, like just another guy type of a tight end. And then Harrison Bryant, who's on the younger side, but I always felt that he was sort of in the uh, shadow of David Njoku a little bit, and it's for good reason. Obviously, Njoku's like the athletic freak, and they have high draft capital in Njoku. He's very talented and all the rest, but he obviously will not be suiting up in this game. So, what is the snap percentage going to be? What is the amount of routes going to? What's the route distribution going to be between Akins and Bryant? Is Akins even going to play? Because he's a seasoned vet. He doesn't necessarily need these reps necessarily. So I'm going to have a close eye on these guys just in case, again, things go wrong with the starters in the middle of the season. Would I feel confident adding these guys in those deeper tight end premium leagues, or should I just cut bait with them in the leagues I am holding them for dynasty purposes? Um, yeah, so that's going to be the Browns. A lot to look at, especially Jerome Ford. It's like not every single taxi squad caliber player can be called up and used as a starter like Isaiah Pacheco, but he's in a great offense, good situation. Again, heaven forbid that Nick Chubb goes down. So big eyes on Jerome Ford. Now, of course, who the Browns are going to be facing in this matchup is the New York Jets, the totally revamped New York Jets. It seems just from a couple of years ago, they were an absolute mess, and they started to kind of put some pieces together. So the big tide turning hire for me was when they hired Joe Douglas as the GM, as a talent evaluator. He has a very long track record of doing well there, and there has been a lot of evidence to the positive changes that have been made to the roster for sure. Then at that point, they were a head coach away. They're bringing Robert Saleh from the defensive coordinator from the 49ers from a couple years ago. Uh, a very successful hire, pretty quick, changed the culture around pretty well, and then obviously did solve the defensive issues on the team. Then they were just a quarterback away based on what we saw last year out of Zach Wilson, who had kind of the slow start to the year with the injury in the preseason, and Mike White, who did flash at times. But of course, they land Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers will not be playing in the Hall of Fame game, and he's currently being drafted as the quarterback 12. Another big time player, a rising star that we're not going to see in this game is wide receiver Garrett Wilson, currently being drafted as the wide receiver 10. Beyond Wilson, they bring in a couple of veterans to kind of add to the receiving core, kind of lift the entire offense here. So they bring in Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb from the Packers, kind of bring them along. So some favorites of Aaron Rodgers over there. Lazard is currently being drafted as wide receiver 52. And they also bring in Mecole Hardman from the Chiefs, who is always is one of these very interesting players that sometimes hits and sometimes doesn't, mostly doesn't, but is definitely an intriguing talent for sure. On the tight end side, got a couple of veterans, Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzama. Tyler Conklin, I think is kind of interesting. He's being drafted right now as tight end 32, which to me is pretty absurd. Either way, he probably wouldn't get any higher than like the mid 20s for me, but really only intriguing in like tight end premium or like deeper dynasty leagues. But at tight end 32, that's a pretty good buying opportunity for him. All those players mentioned, I highly doubt will be involved in this game. So we're going to be focusing on everyone else below them on the depth chart here. One of the bigger names I had not mentioned yet, of course, is Brees Hall, who's currently being drafted as the RB11, despite being on the PUP or the physically unable to perform list as he's rehabbing from the ACL injury from last year. It is early ADP, so that's a little bit rich for my liking. That'll be a very curious one to kind of track and monitor here throughout the rest of August when some more, more significant drafts are happening throughout the month leading up to the start of the season. But in this game, my eyes are going to be completely on the RB usage, even with the Dalvin Cook rumors. So, as they stand right now, the New York Jets have three running backs under the age of 25. Of course, they have Michael Carter, the third year running back, who is more of the pass catching role of the bunch. Then they bring in Izzy Abikanda, who's more of the speedy back out of Pittsburgh. His 4.2, 4.340 time from his pro day, kind of unofficial there. Super fast guy, great player. I think he will have more of a significant role in the offense if Brees Hall is to miss time. So all of that will be monitored in this Hall of Fame game, seeing how productive they can be with their touches, when they will be utilized in the offense, if it's only in hurry up situations, if it's in goal line situations, early downs, all these things we're going to be monitor. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for, especially Zonovan Knight, who was no slouch last year, who had a very nice 3 game stretch of the season between week 12 and 14. He averaged RB2 finishes, so not bad as a group behind Hall. All that may change if Dalvin Cook comes into play here. Maybe that's just like a hard knocks thing. I don't know with the New York Jets, but that would certainly shift the entire scope of the running back room there. But we're not going to worry about that for this purpose. If he does sign, we'll touch on that later on in the leading up to the series. Another big position group I'm going to be watching in this game. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is not going to be playing in this game. However, I am really intrigued to see Zach Wilson. He now has a tremendous opportunity to learn from one of the best who ever played the game, not as a mentor necessarily. I think Rodgers could probably struggle with that, but just being around him, watching him play, watching the way he can take command of an offense, I think that's going to do wonders for Zach Wilson here, who for me has been a favorite later round target of mine in Superflex startups I've done over the spring and summer, especially after the surge of talent that has been brought in because of Aaron Rodgers. But we are really focused on life after Rodgers at this point for the New York Jets offense because he is 39. He's here at least for this year, maybe next year. We'll see how it goes, but um, you know, that's up there. So I really want to see if Zach Wilson can really take command of the offense, limit mistakes, execute well. But if he is still turning the ball over, things like this, it may just be time to cut the slack with him. His honestly, his career may be in jeopardy if he is not absolutely solid, not just in the Hall of Fame game, but throughout the entire preseason here. So big eyes on Zach Wilson, and then with all those new faces to the pass catching group, I'm very curious about Corey Davis's role in this offense. Um, if he will even play in this game is question number one because he's a vet. He might not necessarily need the reps, but it may be beneficial for him because I guess a case could be made that he could be on the roster bubble, even though he's a solid player. Um, you know, I wouldn't call it a guarantee. So I'm very curious about what he will look like in this preseason, especially in this game. Furthermore, of the pass catchers, gonna have big eyes on Jason Brownlee. Who is Jason Brownlee? He was an undrafted rookie this year. He is actually right now the number one trending player on the sleeper app because he has been lighting up camp, made a ridiculous one-handed catch the other day. The question is though, can it translate in this game in Canton and throughout the preseason? Like on Hard Knocks, they always feature these guys who you're kind of rooting for the whole way through, and then something happens where they miss a blocking assignment, which causes a fumble, or they run the wrong route and it causes an interception. So I'm gonna have my eyes on him to see what he's able to do if he can make the most out of this opportunity that he has been doing very well with up to this point. As far as the tight ends go, I'm going to have big eyes on Jeremy Ruckert. He kind of falls into that David Bell category for me, where I had somewhat high hopes. Now, he didn't have as much of a cost as David Bell did last year, but I'm just wanting to see if any of the value that he has can be salvaged for dynasty purposes. So he wasn't super productive at Ohio State, but I figured, with this offense potentially trending up over time, maybe he could be caught onto that wave. But as a rookie, he did not play a lot. He was kind of off and on hurt, and then when he did play, it was just he may have dressed, but he really didn't play a lot of significant snaps at all through the season. So I want to see if he's on the field, one, and how he's on the field. Is he just like a blocking tight end? Is he gonna be running routes, targeted even, things like that. So there's a lot of things I'm gonna be looking for um, on this very intriguing Jets team that finds himself in a very competitive AFC East. So that's going to do it to preview the Hall of Fame game. Very excited for football, but who's going to limit our expectations for just how exciting it can be, but having your dynasty teams in mind, there's a lot to think about here. Now, as we continue the show through the rest of the preseason, I'm going to be slowly unveiling more team previews, more of my rankings leading up to the season. I will be making ranks for IDP guys this year, so I'm excited for that challenge. And then the in-season schedule will be very similar to what we did last year. So I'm going to be doing a start-sit show which I'm hoping will be with a lot of listener questions to try to help you with those lineup setting debates and dilemmas. Um, so yeah, just subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another episode of the Fantasy Ladder podcast, but also all of the other great content being put out by IDP guys. So until next time, enjoy the game and keep climbing.